Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, a beloved West Virginia hot dog restaurant closed in 2018. An annual tribute sale gives people a chance to relive its glory days.
People think it's just a hot dog. It's more than a hot dog. You don't see a line like this at Dairy Queen. It's childhood coming back, you know what I mean?
A West Virginia town can trace its beginnings to the first place its founders lived, a giant stump.
It was over 11 foot high, 11 foot wide. It's the size of a bedroom in an apartment.
And a few people still farm the way folks did before tractors, with horses.
If you're careful enough to use horses, you're more concerned about what you're growing and you're more in tune to, and you're paying more attention so you grow better food.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. For generations, Skeenies Hotdogs in Sissonville, West Virginia was known for serving some of the best slaw dogs around. The restaurant closed in 2018, but still comes alive for the annual Skeenies tribute sale, giving devoted Skeenies fans a few days to make up for lost time. Folkways reporter Zach Harold has this story.
Have you ordered?
No.
Can I stand here while you order? I'm doing this for West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Oh, okay.
I want to get the sound of somebody.
Oh, okay.
Order it.
I'm getting them 10.
So who are the 10 for?
Huh?
Who
Dude,
are-
it's for me.
Donald Whitey White used to be a Skeenies Hot Dogs regular.
Give me 10 with everything.
He would swing by in his wrecker on his way to rescue some stranded motorist and pick up a couple hot dogs.
And everybody get my record and they said, you had it Skeenies, didn't it? Because it's got the smell that nobody else, the onions, they stay in your car.
But then, in March 2018, owner Andy Skeen died of a short illness. He was just 59 years old. Andy had no children, so his sister Karen was the only one left who knew the family recipe for Skeeny's legendary chili and slaw. About a month before her brother passed, she asked him about carrying on that legacy.
And he said, no, go ahead and let it die with me.
See, long ago, Andy and Karen's father, Andy Sr., the restaurant's founder, sought to make Skeenies a nationwide brand, and even had the restaurant franchised in 13 states. But he found that the bigger the company got, the harder it was to control the quality of the product. So he yanked the franchise licenses and vowed that only his direct descendants would ever operate Skeenies. Karen's brother took over the place when he got older, but at her family's encouragement, she made a life outside the food business, becoming a successful court reporter. And even though she would now be the last of their proud lineage, her brother was adamant that running the restaurant was just too much for her.
He said, I don't want you working in here every day like we did 7 days a week, all these hours, worrying, all the time with it.
Seeing the restaurant shut down was hard on fans like Donald. He would fantasize about pulling in and grabbing a couple of those onion-heavy hot dogs.
Because I live right out the road there. And I was like, I told that lady all the time, I said, don't stop giving me Skeenies.
It was hard on Karen, too.
It's a part of me. It's an integral part of me. And I just felt sad to let it go.
So she decided she just wouldn't let it go.
All right, so we steam our buns here. We steam our wieners here. And then
Karen lives in Florida, but still comes back to West Virginia each Thanksgiving to see her extended family. So in 2022, in the days leading up to Turkey Day, she made 40 gallons of chili and chopped 100 pounds of cabbage to make slaw. She ordered 2,000 wieners and buns. And on that Black Friday, she flicked on the neon open sign. The line of customers didn't end for 10 straight hours.
we didn't expect the crowds. We were out of everything the first day, and we just were sitting there, what are we going to do? We have to get more buns, we have to get more hot dogs, we have to make more chili.
That night, she had to dispatch her cousins to run out and buy ingredients for the next day. And knowing she couldn't sling hot dogs for another 10 hours all by herself, she called in reinforcements.
She had messaged me and said, "Linda, can you come help?"
Linda Traup worked for the restaurant for several years in the 2000s, and Karen knew she was one of the best employees they ever had. The next day, she was right there in the trenches with Karen. Since then, Linda has returned each Thanksgiving weekend to help Karen run the Skeenies tribute sale.
I mean, this is the best 2 days for me. It really is, of the year. I enjoy it. I do.
Hard work, though.
It is. I mean, my back is hurting, but it's worth it.
Karen has recruited a few more helpers through the years, but it remains a skeleton crew. And yet, in 2024, they made 3,500 hot dogs over 2 days. The flood of customers and small staff leads to long days and long lines. But nobody in the kitchen seems to mind.
I asked my team about an hour ago, and we're all dead. I said, "Do you guys think I should do it again next year?" They're all, "Do you guys think I should do it again next year?"
Yes.
That was unanimous.
They do it for the same reason Karen's dad was such a stickler for quality. They want to make the customers happy. And despite the long waits, the customers seem to be.
I mean, they wait an hour and a half in the cold and the snow, and they thank us.
Michael Hutchinson is used to waiting in front of Skeenies. This is where he used to catch the school bus.
I was in the drawing, and I drew a race car because my family's into racing, and she had it taped right here for the lot of years. And I put Skeenies on the quarter panel of it, so I got free hot dogs every now and again when nobody was around.
This year, he brought his 15-year-old daughter Antoinette to have her own Skeenies hot dog.
People think it's just a hot dog. It's more than a hot dog. You don't see a line like it's at Dairy Queen. It's childhood coming back, you know what I mean?
That's true for Karen, too.
Whenever I would come home to visit them, I would come in this restaurant before I went to the house because that's where I'd always find them. And so when I have these sales, I feel like it's where I still find them.
With the sale over, Skeenies now sits darkened. There's nowhere to buy the indescribably different slaw dogs promised by the billboard that sits above this little restaurant. Karen hopes to return home and bring this place back to life in November. Until then, memory will just have to suffice. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold in Sissonville, West Virginia.
Danielle, 4 with everything. Thank you so much. Thank you for waiting.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in Appalachia. Find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. Last summer, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld laws that target unhoused people by banning camping in public. Since then, more localities have passed bans. And now, West Virginia lawmakers are considering a statewide ban. West Virginia Public Broadcasting's Brianna Heaney spoke with people experiencing homelessness in the southern coalfields.
In a little church, nestled in the middle of the tiny town of Logan, sits Neighbor Methodist Church. Inside, residents who are experiencing homelessness or food insecurity line up for a free meal and a care package full of groceries. The church hosts these events multiple days a week. Outside, the rain is picking up. The event organizers let folks know about a flood warning.
Everybody listen up. We're supposed to start getting rain tonight.
Listen.
And that rain is a potential of flood warning. So if you're in an area where it could be flooding, get up higher tonight.
Yes.
Okay?
Don't fall asleep.
Floods can be deadly for people sleeping along the creeks and rivers that scribble through the county. Violet, whose name we changed to protect her identity, is one of the attendees who will need to heed this warning. She lives, for the most part, outside.
I mean, I stay wherever I can. I've stayed in abandoned buildings, under bridges, in the open night air. I mean, sometimes we get lucky enough to find someone to stay with a night or two. I mean, just wherever.
She says she experienced a divorce and unemployment. She also struggled with addiction. Logan County was part of the nation's epicenter for the opioid epidemic.
I've had a long line of history with, substance abuse and such things. And
here in Logan, Violet and others tell me it's hard to shake the stigma. She says, in a small town, it's hard to get past being a once criminal or a once addict.
I'll never be more than no matter what I do.
Aside from the churches and a few nonprofits, there isn't a lot of help in breaking the cycle. There isn't a homeless shelter within an hour's drive of Logan. This is the case for nearly all of southern West Virginia, where most communities live a couple hours from a shelter. And the city of Logan recently passed a camping ban that prohibits camping on public property. Earlier in the day, I met Ben Hanna and Christy Price, outreach workers with the Coalition to End Homelessness. Hannah says people with nowhere to go really have nowhere to go.
Your quickest way for a warm bed if you're homeless or jail.
Working in rural southern West Virginia also leaves him with very limited resources. He often provides transportation to people and gives rides to available shelters throughout the region.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I've taken people to a shelter in Pike, I've taken people to a shelter in Beckley, I've taken people to a shelter in Huntington, Charleston. I've even met people from Parkersburg and did a handoff with them to get them up there. But I have nothing here. Nothing.
Affordable housing is in short supply here too, especially units with living standards that qualify for housing vouchers. And rent can be expensive. The average yearly income here is around $28,000. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment can be upwards of $800. Some families seek temporary shelter in hotel rooms. At a hotel in Chapmanville, Ben Hanna and Christy Priest are checking in with clients, a family of 6. The coalition is paying for their hotel room until Hanna and Priest can get the family into more stable housing. Hannah gives the couple an update on their prospects.
The housing, the affordable housing that we have around here is just basically non-existent.
Yeah.
There's only so many places you can go, and we've almost exhausted all of them. But I mean, I have faith that we'll find one for you guys.
Hannah says there's one extra problem for the family. They have 4 daughters and 1 on the way, which means they'll need a bigger place.
Then we got the issue, we've got 4 daughters and 2 parents, so it has to be a bigger unit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I believe that's a wall we'll get over too.
The couple has never had an eviction, nor do they have a criminal record. Hannah says those qualifications should make it easier for the family to get into a place if they can find one. But weeks later, they still haven't been able to find housing for the family. Hannah says with the recent floods, it's going to be even harder. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney in Logan.
That story is part of WVPB's series on homelessness in the Mountain State. For more, visit our website, wvpublic.org. Coming up, a West Virginia city that started inside a stump. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, focusing on students' futures. Classes available at concord.edu/apply.
My family and I are big fans of a podcast called Terrestrials on Radio Lab for Kids. It's a fun, informative show that's meant for younger listeners, but has plenty for grown-ups too. For my kids and me, it became a gateway into other science podcasts. In an episode last year, Terrestrials featured a piece of Revolutionary War history that led to the founding of a city in West Virginia. The story was part of an episode about stumps. Here's Terrestrials creator and host, Lulu Miller.
And now we're going to meet a stump that is not just a hotel for rodents and birds and coyotes, but humans.
So we're walking across a field. It's kind of like a soccer field. There's a little river to our right.
We sent producer Alan and producer Anna to go check it out.
There it is. Straight ahead is this large,
big, wiry
white.
I love how this tree looks. Like, it looks old.
All right, so we are going to roll back to the 1700s. The forest was dense with ancient oaks and spruces and maples.
It was the absolute wilderness, huge trees.
This is Gene Thorne, a wildlife biologist who is probably the world expert on this one particular stump.
Yeah.
And the story goes that running through that forest were two brothers who were trying to escape. Now, this was way back before the United States was a country and the British were trying to colonize the land, and those two brothers were scouts in the British Army, but they didn't want to fight anymore. So they'd abandoned their posts and ran into the forest as fugitives. And as they ran, they were looking for a place to hide from
Copperheads, rattlesnakes, mountain lions.
And of course, the British Army, they would be in huge trouble, like executed trouble, if they were caught. And one day, these brothers,
Sam and John Pringle,
they came to the banks of a river and they saw.
Well, that's where they found the hollow sycamore tree.
A massive, hollow stump with bright white bark.
It was over 11 foot high, 11 foot wide. It's the size of a bedroom in an apartment.
Wow. So tentatively, they climbed inside.
I can't believe how deep that goes.
I can't believe you're standing up right now.
Oh, easy, too. Like, I can put my arms straight up in the air, and I am not touching the top.
And they liked it. It was warm, cozy.
It smells like a fresh forest floor.
Yeah, well, it is.
So they decided to move in and almost immediately began tricking out their stump.
Welcome to MTV Cribs Stumps Edition.
Today we got the Pringle Brothers.
Let's check out this stump.
First we got the bed.
Mattress made of leaves, layers of fur hide.
Fuzzy.
They use their hides for blankets.
Mad cozy.
And check out this door.
Made out of bark.
Custom made.
Tan skins to keep the winter weather out.
Yo, and no stump is complete without a lit fireplace for cooking up gamey stew.
Ooh. Where's all that smoke gonna go?
A little opening at the top where the smoke went up and out. It's just like a chimney.
See you next time.
Wait, but so if you were to like walk through the forest and you come across this kind of giant 11-foot tall stump and there'd be like a little trail of smoke coming out the top.
Yeah, so you'd have a smoky smell.
Okay, I mean, I'm picturing them in there. They've got like meat jerky hanging on the walls. Are wolves and bears and other critters not drawn to that smell? And
Now that's a really interesting question.
because apparently one day a bear did attack. Well, after Sam had tried to shoot it.
He had big red eyes, and there was these snarls of saliva coming out of his mouth.
Gene, it turns out, is also a historical reenactor who will sometimes dress up as Sam Pringle and tell the legend of that bear attack as though he was Sam himself.
So I drew my knife out, and by that time he had hit me and got me down on the ground, and he was chewing on me.
Oh.
And I sunk that knife behind his shoulder, and I blacked out right then.
A few hours later,
John, he found me. Samuel! Laying on the ground, and he had to literally carry me down off of the hill and into our tree, and he laid me down and put a blanket on me and tucked me up.
good brother, John.
Great brother.
Sam's little brother knew he was going to have to hike hundreds of miles to the nearest town to find supplies. So he left Sam there all winter long, vulnerable, aching, the snow swirling outside, protected by the stump. And after months,
I was running out of food. It was getting critical.
but then one glorious day,
Back over the mountains, here came John, and he was refreshed with good news. The war was over, and so the British Army was no longer looking for us.
so they were safe to move to a nearby town. Sam got married They moved into a house, but after just a little bit of time, he realized he missed his stump. So he convinced his wife and some friends to return.
Pioneers came over the mountain with them, and they all lived in that tree till they got their cabins built.
Wow.
So there were several families, actually, that lived in there for a time period.
Oh, so like how many people do you think in that one stump?
About 10 to 12 people that would have been inside that. Yeah.
Oh, that's a tight pack. The stump sheltered them as Sam Pringle and his friends built cabin after cabin, which would eventually turn into the city of Buchanan, which now has over 5,000 people. And alongside the river that flows through the town is a park where the stump used to be. And right near it is a hollow sycamore tree that they have named the Pringle tree.
Hey, pass me a Pringle.
All right. We are in the Pringle tree, and we are eating
Pringles.
Pringles. Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's it. That is all that Terrestrials has to offer you today. There is nothing else cool about to happen.
What's that?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Me too.
Me 3.
Me 4.
The Badgers. Listeners with badgering questions for the expert. Are you ready?
Hey, my name is Joe. I am 29 years old. My question is, does the stump know that the rest of the tree is gone?
That's quite sad and quite existential. Maybe it's just living its own moment.
My name is Elise. I'm 6 years old. Can trees get band-aids for snags?
You're going to have to ask a scientist about that question.
Okay. Gene?
Yeah, they can. There's people that make a living. They call themselves tree surgeons.
Huh.
And if you get a broken branch off, you can actually go and wrap it up with a Band-Aid.
Wow.
And kind of a tarry like substance goes underneath to keep the moisture from getting inside and causing rot.
Wow, I wonder if those tree surgeons had to take a Hippocratic oath.
Hi, my name is Sia. I'm 12 years old. My question is, do bears scratch themselves on dead wood or only on trees that are alive?
For the most part, they choose live trees.
Huh.
They're getting rid of their winter coat, so they'll rub up and down the tree and take that fur off. The other thing that happens, they're trying to rub and get ticks dislodged and off of themselves. And there's been some research that the oils off of birch trees and pine resin are actually a tick repellent.
Smart.
Hi, my name is Mark. I'm 33 years old, and I'm joined by
Sophie
and
Stinky.
ages 5 and 2. And we'd like to know, why do we say we're stumped when we run into a question we can't answer?
Is it because of the shape of the stump? You can't see the kind of a way to branch off into your thinking? I have been stumped.
Well, that is the most perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming along on this journey with us. The show, again, is called Terrestrials. It's a brand new series all about nature from Radiolab. And there are so many more episodes. If you liked what you heard, just look for Terrestrials on the Radiolab for Kids feed.
Those last voices you heard were Terrestrials host Lulu Miller, author Amanda Thompson, and West Virginia biologist Gene Thorne, along with fans of the show. WNYC's Terrestrials is a family-friendly show all about nature, exploring the strangeness and wonder right here on Earth. It's produced by Ana Gonzalez and Alan Gofinski. To learn more, visit terrestrialspodcast.org or find it wherever you get podcasts. Occasionally, you'll hear Appalachia mentioned as a climate refuge because it's far from the coastlines and western wildfires. But we see climate catastrophes here in the mountains too, especially flooding. The 1,000-year floods that struck Kentucky in 2022. Hurricane Helene last year, which swamped North Carolina and Tennessee. And now the February floods across central Appalachia. At least 20 people died in Kentucky alone. Kentucky Public Radio's Justin Hicks reported on this most recent flood, which submerged communities in Kentucky, West Virginia and Virginia.
Gigi Neese, her husband, and their 5 dogs live in the small town of Busy, Kentucky, just outside of Hazard. And they had just finished building their house along with a dog grooming business in the basement. On Saturday, Neese kept a close eye on the creek outside her home.
In about 30 minutes' time, I turned around and it was coming up on the steps. I kept hearing things banging into the basement, and it was terrifying.
That's when she knew it was time to abandon the house and their possessions. They called 911 and were rescued in a boat. They were one of the more than 1,000 water rescues in the first 24 hours of the emergency. By the next morning, their roof was just an island in a muddy sea.
We lost our home completely submerged. We got out with our clothes, a few clothes that we was able to grab real quick while they rescued us.
They specifically built this house high off the ground to be flood resilient because they lost their last one in a mudslide about 2 years ago.
And we thought we were safe, and it still took the house again. So it's kind of hard to start rebuilding after 2 and 3 times.
Kentucky is getting used to disasters. In 2021, historic tornadoes ripped through the plains of western Kentucky. Then, about 6 months later, historic flash flooding swept through the mountains. Governor Andy Beshear says the sheer statewide impact of this storm could even rival those.
You look at the number of people we've already lost and the damage. This is one of the most serious weather events we've dealt with in at least a decade. We've certainly had our share, and this is another significant one.
Meteorologists say this event was unique in that every county in Kentucky saw flooding, even though statistically, the soaking rains that crawled across the state this weekend dumped more water in the south-central part of the state.
Had all the rain, then right in the middle of it, we had a tornado warning, so it's crazy weather.
That's Ricky King, Muhlenberg County's emergency director. He said they got about 7 inches of rain in one day, followed by 2 inches of snow the very next morning. King says some roads are closed, and they did have to rescue several people who tried to drive into high water. At least 3 people died due to car accidents amid flooding. But King said the overall impacts don't seem as dire as it is in the mountains, where flash flooding is more common.
Yeah, we're not near like Hazard. Matter of fact, I've just talked to some folks from Hazard, which they're in a kind of little bit different situation than we are.
Over in Hazard, downtown coordinator Bailey Richards says everyone was well aware a storm was coming. But many folks were prepared for it to impact the same neighborhoods as the 2022 floods.
It's obviously hitting the same region, but it's hitting completely different creeks. It's hitting completely different rivers, different neighborhoods. So it makes it really hard to prepare for these things.
Despite those surprises, Richard says there's a grim silver lining. People in her area know the steps to respond to a disaster. It's a tired, well-rehearsed dance.
As soon as it started happening, I was like, okay, well, I know what I got to do. We got to organize this and this. Because last time we were all just kind of staring there like shell-shocked, like, what do we do? And I think now we know. So,
Parts of southwest Virginia saw as much as 7 inches of rain, and at least one person was killed. Dozens of others suffered property damage and had begun the slow process of cleanup. Radio IQ's Roxy Todd has more.
In the town of Richlands, Maudie Jones and her husband Dwight have been at work since Sunday, pulling out mud, soaked furniture, and clothes from their home.
Oh, Lord, the water come up, and it come up fast. Really fast. He was trapped inside.
And they had to get me out in a boat.
Like many people across central Appalachia who are dealing with flood damage, the Joneses are cleaning their home the best they can by themselves.
I jerked the carpet up, pad and everything, and mopped all the floors and stuff and bleach.
A neighbor, Barry Ratliff, stops by with a load of firewood.
I had some wood at the house, and so I figured I'd try to help them out the best way I could.
They have a wood stove that is intact, but all their wood washed away. Getting heat into the house will help them dry out their soaked floors.
I'm going to bring you some more and stuff, but all of that's perfect size what you can burn, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all that's perfect. I can bear it.
30 miles away in the town of Grundy, Chief of Police Seth McLaughlin's voice is hoarse from rescuing people in the cold and rain. He says this is the worst flooding this area has seen in decades.
The floodgates were closed Saturday before the water got that high. They done exactly what they were supposed to do and kept the water out of this area.
The floodgates were part of a major project by the Army Corps of Engineers after a another flood in 1977. McLaughlin says without that infrastructure, this storm could have wiped out what was left of their town's homes and businesses. In Grundy, I'm Roxy Todd.
Before the tractor, farmers in Appalachia relied on workhorses to plow fields and pull their wagons. In southwestern Virginia, the practice has mostly disappeared, often along with the farms themselves. But some farmers never let go of farming with a horse. Folkways reporter Connie Bailey Kitts has this story.
I want you to just see how steep it is. Get up. Hey.
Today, Charlie Burnett and his horses Jeb and Rose set off to mow on a hillside with an incline of almost 55 degrees. We're up on Periwinkle Mountain in Wythe County, Virginia.
My biggest field is 4 and 6 acres, and it's mountaintops.
Where Charlie grows oats, puts up hundreds of bales of hay, and hauls wood for fuel. The land has sustained his family for generations.
This was a farm that you grew a garden. Maybe you grew 3 acres of corn. That fed the cows that you milked every day.
This was typical family subsistence farming in this part of Appalachia until about the 1950s.
All the areas in the Blue Ridge and Appalachian region got rid of their horses when they went to farming with tractors.
But not Charlie's family. They stuck with their horses for safety reasons, not wanting to risk rolling a tractor.
We had a team out of necessity here. We still have to have a team of horses here on this mountainside.
But the workhorses of Charlie's youth are harder to come by these days. So 15 years ago, he started breeding farm workhorses, like the old-style Belgian workhorse. Inadvertently, he timed things well because when the pandemic raised concerns about food security, more people started to turn back to traditional farming practices. Everybody I talked with about workhorses said there was one man I needed to meet, someone who had done this his whole life and was still farming. His name was Danny Wingate. Sadly, not long after I caught up with him, he passed away. The day we met, he was at his sister's house in Wytheville, Virginia.
Come right on in.
Thank you. Danny had brought along a photo album of his farm in Grayson County. He showed me a picture of his wife, Clevie, sitting behind a team of horses during potato harvest.
If you're careful enough to use horses, you're more concerned about what you're growing, and you're more in tune to your soil conditions and fertility, and you're paying more attention so you grow better food. Most of the time people it's just wanting to go back to the land. They're concerned about what they're eating, where their food's coming from, the supply of their food, how many chemicals is on what you're eating.
With horses, you can reduce the need for chemical fertilizers. Composted horse manure helps supply that. It's a soil fertility practice encouraged in the regenerative agriculture movement. And horses don't compact the soil like a tractor either, Danny said. Of course, if you're planning to farm with a workhorse, the first step is finding one.
They've almost let the old-style horses die out, being thick-bodied and good quiet minds and big-boned and a slower, more docile kind of horse, easier to get along with.
These traits got lost when many farm workhorses were crossbred to make more of a carriage horse or hitch horse. They became taller, longer-legged, showy horses, and they could sell for much more than a farm workhorse.
The Belgian horses and the Percherons are a totally different horse than they were even when I was a teenager.
And that's why Danny was excited about the horses his friend Charlie Burnett was breeding. We met Charlie at the beginning of the story up on Periwinkle Mountain.
Charlie's trying to preserve a breed of farm horse. And if you look back in the old Breeders' Gazettes and stuff from the turn of the century, when they were importing them, the horses they were coming here then were just like what he's raising now.
And back on Charlie's farm, I see firsthand what Danny was talking about, why it's good for an Appalachian farm workhorse to be short, sturdy, and sweet-tempered.
It is heavy.
So swing it?
Yep, you kind of swing it. Say, easy, Rose. Sling it up on it.
Easy, Rose.
There you go.
Oh, gosh, you might have to help me.
Okay, give it a toss.
Even though I need a little help with the harness on this first try, Rose's withers are not that much taller than I am. I got it on the second try. Most of Charlie's 8 horses are about the size of Rose, and it's a result of his breeding efforts over the last 15 years.
This is senior horse feed. More fiber, more fat.
2 of the mares get extra grain today. Each one is nursing a foal born 3 weeks earlier. The Blue Roan broodmare is a purebred American Brabant.
This is a horse I'm raising these colts out of to kind of be what I think is going to be the next generation of the workhorse for the Appalachian region. Gracie is the American Brabant breed for people that's looking for a heavy horse but short so you can harness it better.
The ancestors of this breed were the Belgian horses that came to America in the 1880s from the Brabant region of Belgium. Their bloodlines were undoubtedly in some of the old Appalachian workhorses. But keeping track of bloodlines was difficult.
And there was crosses from all these horses because these people weren't concerned about registry. These people were concerned about having a horse big enough to do farm work with and to make a living with and not cost you a fortune to feed. They didn't have no money.
When Charlie started looking for this old-style horse, he luckily found some American Brabants right here in Appalachia.
Gracie here is she's just barely 16 hands high. She has huge legs, huge girth. Gracie weighs about 1,800 pounds. So she's not a small horse when it comes to size, but her height, she's not tall.
Charlie's 2-year-old fillies, Roxy and Kate, have the characteristic blocky heads and thick necks and are already trained to drive.
This is what I remember seeing in the mountains when I was growing up and I seen them have workhorses.
A little colt, Jasper, blinks his long eyelashes. He pushes his soft muzzle against my microphone, and that tells Charlie something.
But what I am really, really noticing, and it's really what I like about them, is how docile and how friendly they seem to be.
And that disposition is critical in making a workhorse your partner. So just how do you learn to gain the trust of 1,800 pounds of horsepower? Charlie and Danny learned this horse relationship craft from their grandfathers and uncles. But it's not so easy to learn these days, Danny said.
You can watch everything on YouTube and learn and see how people do it. But until you do it hands-on, it's a totally different thing.
You really need to work alongside a mentor, Danny said, with someone who has skills in reading the horse and skills in building trust.
If a horse slings his head all the time, a horse won't tell you a lie. He's telling you that something's wrong. It's your job to figure it out.
In fact, training the drivers is probably more important than teaching the horses.
Really what you need to do is go somewhere where there's somebody that can show you for a while, like a little apprentice program.
And Danny had reason to be optimistic about traditional horse farming practices being passed on.
One thing about most horse people, they're really generous with their time and knowledge. Most older people are like me, they really want to see young people succeed. Most people are more than willing to share their knowledge because they see it getting gone.
And one person who was on the receiving end of Danny's knowledge is Charlie Lawson, who lives at the foot of Paint Lick Mountain in Tazewell County, Virginia. Charlie's always been a horseman, and with Danny's help, he found his first team of workhorses. With his current team, he's working a large garden.
Well, I'm learning about this regenerative agriculture, basically relearning the secrets that the old ancient peoples had.
He says he's tired of not knowing what's in the food he's eating, and he doesn't want to be dependent on diesel fuel to run a tractor.
Yeah.
Today, he's ready to plant potatoes, some 1,300 feet of potatoes.
Well, we're trying something that we haven't tried before, which is using a cultivator to open up the furrow.
That was last spring, and this winter, Charlie's family enjoyed dozens of quarts of beans, beets, corn, tomatoes, and potatoes grown with the help of good old horsepower. It was Charlie Lawson who conveyed the sad news to me that Danny Wingate had died just as I was finishing this story. Local news stations paid tribute to Danny's iconic role in sustaining the folk arts throughout the region. And for me, Danny Wingate had brought to life not just the utility, but the beauty of preserving and passing on our old ways of farming with horses. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Connie Bailey Kitts in Wythe County, Virginia.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. Since 2019, our Folkways reporters have contributed nearly 200 stories. You can find them at our website, wvpublic.org. In 2022, nature artist Rosalie Hazlett set out on a trip to illustrate parts of the Appalachian Mountains that often get overlooked. That is, the tiny birds, reptiles, and other critters hiding beneath leaves or up in the trees. Her illustrations came together as Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, an artist's journey. The book is full of colorful images and thoughts Hazlett recorded as she spent hours exploring the mountains. Last fall, producer Bill Lynch spoke with Hazlett about the book.
To begin with, where did the idea of the project come from?
So I have always had a special affinity for small creatures ever since I got my first hamster when I was 8. I know a lot of kids go through hamster phases. I think mine was a little more intense than most kids. And that kind of spun off into a love for all rodents. And then that love for tiny creatures just kind of continued as I started to learn more about the natural world as I got older, and always wanted to be an artist, but wasn't really sure what to focus on with my art. And it wasn't until probably college and my early 20s that I realized that I could pair art and nature together, and I could make work that celebrates the natural world. I started a personal project in 2017 called Tiny Worlds West Virginia. And that was just, my goal was to get better at watercolor and also to learn a little bit about a new creature every month. And in 2021, I got really hyped up on caffeine one day and I took a big walk and I was like, what if I illustrate a whole bunch of tiny critters from the whole Appalachian mountain range? And before I could talk myself down from it, I called the guy that I was going to marry in a week. And I was like, can we move out of our apartment and do this huge trip and document all these things? And he was like, yeah, let's do it.
Tell me about your husband. And this is, it's a pretty big leap to do something like this.
Yeah.
So tell me about him.
So he is a water engineer and he works remotely. And so it worked out that he was able to keep working while we were on the road. So we ended up going on this trip. It was 6 months in total, a continuous road trip. Started in Alabama, which is the southernmost part of the Appalachians. And then we ended in Newfoundland, which is the northernmost part in North America. It extends into Scotland. And pretty much every day I would go out and look for interesting small critters, plants, fungi, slime molds, all sorts of stuff. And then I would document my observations with, words and then sketches and take pictures. And then I'd come back to wherever we were staying and I would illustrate what I saw using watercolor.
The trip itself and the places you went, how did you choose them?
So we wanted to take advantage of discounted rates at different rentals. And a lot of them, you have to stay in a place for 2 weeks or longer. We had 6 main base camps all scattered throughout the mountains. We kind of just looked at a map of the Appalachian Mountains and we found these locations that were close to public lands, so national park or something nearby, state parks.
Words and pictures, which was harder to get down?
Oh, words. I've never really thought of myself as a writer. I've been a journaler my whole life. I kept very regular journals from the time I was 5 to 18. Every day is documented. So I always like to record what I saw, but I never really tried to write essays or poems or polished writing. It was always just very casual. And so I kind of leaned into that for this book because I was really psyching myself out about the writing. I originally wanted it to be all illustrations and just the tiniest descriptions of what I saw. And then as I was working on it, I realized that it was becoming disjointed and I needed to tell the story more through words so that people could understand what was happening if they weren't there. On these long hikes, I'd be by myself, so much time in my own head. And so I would just jot down what I was thinking or what I was seeing in my phone in the notes app. And so I basically wrote the whole book while I was walking or sitting on a log, because sometimes I'd be like tripping over stuff. So I'd stop and I'd sit on a log and I'd write out a observation or the beginning of an essay, and then I'd edit it later. And that actually works really well for this book because I want it to feel like you're walking alongside me through the mountains.
There's definitely a feeling of being in your thoughts. There's a lot of introspection in the book. You kind of gloss over portions of your childhood and even how you got there, which made me interested in your childhood, in your upbringing. You were homeschooled?
Yeah, I was homeschooled till I was about 12. Yeah, and I'm one of 7 kids, so had kind of a weird childhood, lived on a farm, was in a family band. I talk about a lot of these things in the book, and it was a very beautiful childhood, but a little weird.
The family band, tell me just a hair about that, because...
Yeah, so I have, let me see, I don't even know how many older siblings I have. I have 3 older siblings. Lost count. 3 older siblings. And so by the time I came along, there was already a family band established and they all played instruments. And so it was just kind of a thing that when you're born into my family, you are part of the band. And we were not a big deal, but we did travel around quite a bit to state fairs, festivals, churches, family reunions. And we'd all be standing up there with our old-timey instruments. It was very much like Americana music, so a lot of like John Prine and the Carter family. Yeah, we played lots of tunes together. My dad wrote a lot of the songs too. It was a good time, and it lasted until I was about 14, and I write about that in the book, that I was kind of the demise of the family band because I went to school and my peers found out about the band and they did not think it was cool, so... I ruined it. I broke up the band.
Well, this project, what was your favorite part about it?
Oh, well, there's so many things. One of the things that felt really special was just getting to dive deep into a project for a couple of years. So the trip took 6 months. Planning the trip and getting some grants to help pay for the trip and finding a publisher took a full year before we even left. Coming back afterward, I spent a year finishing all the paintings from those reference materials. So I was able just to kind of lose myself in the project, to lose myself in the places. Even after we got home, I had spent so much time in each place and was so present in each place that I was able to access those memories in a way that I haven't been able to before. So I'd be like working on the section about Quebec, and I would see my husband at lunch and I'd be like, he would ask me what I've been up to, and I'd be like, oh, I'm just in the woods of Quebec right now. Like mentally, like I was there because I had so much time in each place, and that was really a treat.
Do you have a favorite critter?
Oh, there's so many good critters. I'll tell you about 2. In Alabama, one of the very first things that we saw was a green anole lizard, and they're sort of like chameleons. They change color based on their temperature and mood. So I saw this little brown lizard on the trail, and it was holding very still, so I was very pleased, because usually small critters often, because they don't have a lot of defense mechanisms, they're very speedy. So that's a constant challenge with this book, because I only wanted to include things that I actually saw and got my own pictures of. So I couldn't, even though like hellbender salamanders are so iconic for this area, I didn't see one on the trip, so I couldn't include it. So I was watching this little lizard. It was holding still. I was very happy. And then it dove under a leaf and ate a beetle. It stayed under there for a long time. And so I got curious and I lifted up the leaf and it had turned bright green. And I was shook because I did not know that they changed colors. I just thought I was looking at this brown lizard, and then all of a sudden it's this beautiful lime green. So that was a really cool surprise and a lesson in like just watching a critter for a long time will lead to interesting observations. And then the second one I want to talk about is actually an eastern screech owl that I saw after we returned from the trip. So after the 6 months on the road, we came back to the farm that I grew up on, and we lived there for a while. And my goal was just to see this place that I knew so intimately with fresh eyes after the trip. I wondered, after so many months of slow hiking and paying attention, what will I see that I might have missed before? One of the coolest things that I saw right around the farm was an eastern screech owl who lived in a hollow in a tree. And I just stumbled upon this owl one day, and I don't even know how I saw it. It was so camouflaged, but I was just like looking around and saw two eyes staring back at me from this hole. And that owl stayed there all winter long. And that's something that they often do to kind of stake their claim for nesting in the spring. That owl kind of became my muse when I got home, because it was really easy after seeing all this cool stuff on this long trip to think like, oh, what else is there to see in my home? Like, I know everything. It's less exciting. But then thinking about my owl being there and how like hidden it was and how I wouldn't have found it unless I'd been looking closely made me think like, oh, there's probably so much more here that is yet to discover. And that's been a really nice takeaway, is like, it's not always about going elsewhere to find that inspiration, that you can find it in your own backyard.
The book is Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, An Artist's Journey by Rosalie Hazlett. Rosalie, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, An Artist's Journey is available from Mountaineer Books. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Chris Stapleton, Sierra Hall, Steve Earle, Dinosaur Burps, Roberta Flack, Hazel Dickens, Harvey and Copeland, Tyler Childers, and Blue Dot Sessions. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, offering 31 bachelor-level degrees and 6 master-level degrees for students of any age. More information at concord.edu.